All right, let's dive in. This deep dive is going to be wild. You guys sent in the physics of implosion, longitudinal waves, and soul technology. And wow, are we ready for this? We're about to blend physics and consciousness, and maybe even touch on a little sci-fi.
It's going to be quite a journey for sure. Dan Winter's work, it really pushes you to think differently about energy, consciousness, even reality itself. It's a whole new way of looking at things.
Right off the bat, this source material throws some seriously crazy stories at us, like people just disappearing. Ananda Bozeman, a teacher who vanishes from the stage during a workshop. Okay, you've got my attention.
Yeah, that'll get you thinking. But the cool thing is how Dan Winter ties these disappearances to implosion. And we're not talking just matter collapsing, but like a total shift in how consciousness connects to space and time.
So it's not like shrinking to nothing. More like changing their relationship to, I don't know, reality itself.
Exactly. Think of it like, okay, imagine reality as this tightly woven fabric we see every day. Implosion, according to Winter, might let consciousness slip between the threads, like existing beyond our normal ideas of space and time.
Okay, I can kind of picture that, but how does this implosion actually happen? What makes it work?
That's where these things called longitudinal waves come in. Winter's theory is that they're the engine behind implosion. They're created by compressing and focusing energy in a very specific way. He also calls them scalar waves.
So these longitudinal waves are like what, the architects?
Yeah.
They shape the energy for these big shifts in consciousness.
You could say that, yeah. And what's even wilder is that Winter says longitudinal waves, they're the building blocks of gravity.
Hold on. If we're messing with longitudinal waves, does that mean we could mess with gravity? Could we actually make artificial gravity?
That's the whole idea. Winter thinks if we can master these waves, create them, and control them, we could control gravity. Sounds crazy, right? Like science fiction. But some of the research he points to, things like the Kursky-Frost crystal experiment, hint that it might be possible.
Kursky-Frost crystal, huh? Never heard of that.
Yeah, so they took this special crystal, piezoelectric, and when they hit it with a specific type of energy wave, it generated hundreds of times its own weight in gravity. It's pretty mind-blowing.
Wow, okay. I need to know more about these energy waves. They can play with gravity like that. What are they even called and how do they work?
They're called phase conjugate pump waves. Think of it like a pump, but not just making water pressure higher, but making the water into this super focused, coherent stream. That's what phase conjugate pump waves do. They amplify and focus energy, and that sets up the conditions for implosion.
So could we use these phase conjugate pump waves to create those experiences that make people disappear? Intentionally, I mean.
That's a really interesting question, and it's worth exploring. The source material gives some examples of these waves maybe working in nature already. Like it suggests the Schumann resonance, that natural electromagnetic frequency of the Earth, could act like a pump wave for pyramids.
Okay, wait. Are you saying the pyramids were built to use these natural energy waves to make some implosion thing happen? But what for?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. The source material says these structures, maybe they were used to generate and control energy, like on a scale we barely understand today. It even suggests that they could be early versions of, get this, Stargate technology.
Stargate technology? You mean like portals to other places or dimensions? Now we're going full science fiction here.
Yeah, it sounds pretty out there, I'll admit. But we're talking about things that go beyond our current science. There's another fascinating example from the source material about these phase conjugate pump waves. And it has to do with the caduceus energy flow in the spine.
The caduceus flow. That's the symbol with two snakes around a staff, right? Mm-hmm. What'd that have to do with energy and implosion?
It's thought to represent how energy flows in the body, particularly in the spine. And Winter says this flow could be a pump wave, but for consciousness itself.
So our bodies can create these implosion effects just with their natural energy flow.
That's the idea. And if we learn how to intentionally boost or control that flow, well, who knows what could happen?
Okay, so these phase conjugate pump waves, they could be in nature, ancient buildings, even our own bodies. But what about this longitudinal array thing from the source material? How does that fit in?
This is where it gets really interconnected. Winter describes this longitudinal array as like a web of energy, and it connects everything, kind of similar to ideas like the collective unconscious or universal consciousness field.
So it's an energy internet for the whole universe, and we can tap into it through implosion.
That's a great way to put it. And just imagine what that could mean. Accessing info from anywhere, experiencing other realities, even connecting with consciousness beyond our own. Pretty mind-blowing, right?
Definitely stretching my imagination here. But how do we tap into this array? Is it just about mastering implosion, or is there more to it?
That's where science and spirituality meet. Winter says it's not just the technical stuff. Our inner state matters a lot. He says things like empathy and intention, they're crucial for navigating the longitudinal array.
Empathy and intention, so our emotions and thoughts can affect how we connect with this energy web.
That's what Winter proposes. He uses the example of a shaman who can steer a tornado just by feeling its pain. That suggests a deep level of connection, way beyond what we usually think about.
That's a powerful image. So it's not just tech, it's about consciousness, our connection to everything. But how does this all go back to those stories of people disappearing?
What if these people, through meditation or energy practices, they reached this state of coherence and intention where they literally stepped into the longitudinal array? They became one with this energy web.
So they're not gone, they just shifted their awareness to another reality, one we can't perceive right now.
It's mind-bending, isn't it? And it makes you ask so many questions about reality, consciousness, and what we're all capable of.
Wow, that was a lot to take in. This whole longitudinal array, this energy web connecting everything, it's kind of blowing my mind. It makes you wonder about everything we thought we knew about reality.
Yeah, it definitely challenges the way we usually think about how the universe works, for sure. But what I find even more fascinating is how Dan Winter connects this idea of a longitudinal array to things like, clairvoyance, remote viewing, those kinds of extraordinary abilities.
So we're not just talking about some abstract web of energy here. We're talking about actually being able to access information, knowledge, even experiences from outside our normal perception.
That's exactly what the source material suggests, yeah. It describes the longitudinal array as this channel for information, like a way to bypass our physical senses and tap into a non-local consciousness.
This is where it gets really interesting for me. We've been talking about these big concepts, but what about the practical stuff? How does this actually apply to our lives?
That's a great question. And remember, Winter really emphasizes our internal state. He says it's not enough to just get the theory, we have to live it.
So it's about aligning our inner world with these principles.
Yeah.
How do we actually do that?
Well, the source material talks about practices like meditation, mindfulness, being out in nature. These things can help us quiet our minds, connect with our inner stillness, and attune ourselves to those natural rhythms of the universe.
So it's about creating space for that internal coherence to emerge, to become more receptive to those subtle energies and connections.
Exactly. And don't forget, Winter says our emotions, they actually generate those longitudinal waves. So cultivating positive emotions like love, gratitude, compassion. It's not just about feeling good. It's about generating the right kind of energy to align with that longitudinal array.
That makes me think about heart coherence. It's become pretty popular lately, right? This idea of creating harmony between our heart, mind, and emotions.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great connection. Heart coherence practices can be really powerful for strengthening our energy field and becoming more receptive to the longitudinal array.
There seems to be this common thread here, like ancient wisdom and modern science coming together, both pointing towards the importance of aligning ourselves with that harmonious flow of universal energy.
It really is a beautiful coming together of ideas, isn't it? And it speaks to that interconnectedness we keep talking about. Whether it's science, spirituality, ancient traditions, the message is the same. Cultivate inner harmony, connect with our heart's intelligence, and we unlock incredible potential both within ourselves and the world around us.
This reminds me of a quote from the source material, something that really stuck with me. The future belongs to those who can hear the whispers of the universe. It's like the answers aren't out there in space, but inside us.
That's a deep one, for sure. It's a challenge to shift from looking outward to looking inward, to tune in to our intuition, connect with that inner wisdom we all have.
That brings up the teenagers from the Montauk Project, the ones who were supposedly taken because they had these powerful dream abilities. Could that be connected to the longitudinal array?
That's an interesting connection. If the longitudinal array lets us do things like remote viewing and explore other realities, maybe those teenagers were just naturally gifted at tapping into it through their dreams.
Like natural-born array surfers. That's a cool thought. But it also raises some, ethical questions. What if those abilities were used for the wrong reasons?
Definitely. Any kind of power, whether it's tech or spiritual, it can be misused. It's a big reminder that we need to be careful and think about the ethical side of all this, especially when we're exploring these areas of consciousness.
So true. Power without responsibility can be a dangerous thing. But let's talk about some more concrete examples from the source material, like that Koski-Frost crystal experiment. What were the big takeaways from that?
Well, the Koski frost crystal experiment, it was huge because it actually gave us measurable evidence of gravity manipulation. Remember how that crystal, when hit with a specific phase conjugate pump wave, started generating hundreds of times its own weight and gravity?
So it wasn't just theory, it was a real experiment with results you could actually see. What happened to that research, though? Did anything come of it?
The source material says the U.S. government tried to bury those findings to stop them from being published. That makes you think, doesn't it? Like, this tech must have been pretty important, maybe even world-changing, for them to try and keep it secret.
Pretty intriguing. Makes you wonder what other mind-blowing tech might be hidden away in some government lab somewhere. But getting back to gravity control, what could that mean for us?
The possibilities are almost endless. Space travel, new energy sources, a whole new understanding of physics. It's mind-boggling.
It's like something out of Star Trek. Speaking of which, the source material mentions a link between longitudinal waves and warp drive. Could that actually become real someday?
Winter suggests the principles behind creating and directing longitudinal waves, they're similar to what people think warp drive might use. It's all about creating a distortion in space-time, to travel faster than light.
Okay, now you're really pushing the limits of my understanding.
Yeah.
But the idea of traveling to other stars, that's amazing.
Right. It just shows how many groundbreaking advancements could be possible if we can figure out how to use implosion and these longitudinal waves.
But as we've been talking about, it's not just about the tech. Our consciousness, our intentions, those play a role too. So what kind of future are we creating with this knowledge?
That's the big question, isn't it? The one we all have to grapple with. As we delve deeper into these areas of consciousness, as we explore the possibilities of implosion technology, we can't forget about responsibility.
It's like we're at a crossroads. We could create a future full of amazing advancements, or we could head down a path of unintended consequences. The choices we make today, they matter.
They really do. And those choices start with each of us. By being aware, being empathetic, understanding that we're all interconnected, we can help create a future that benefits everyone. A future that's good for humanity and the planet.
This has been an amazing journey so far. We've covered so much ground, but we're not done yet. In the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore what we can actually do to bring these concepts into our lives and how we can help create that more conscious and harmonious future. Stick with us. It's been quite a ride, hasn't it? Exploring Dan Winter's ideas about implosion, longitudinal waves, and this whole idea of soul technology. It really makes you rethink consciousness and how everything's connected,
It definitely does. It's like a whole new way of seeing ourselves, not as these separate beings, but as part of this giant energy web. And we can tap into things beyond what we normally perceive. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. But I'm sure a lot of people listening are thinking, okay, this is all very interesting, but how do I actually use this in my life? What are the practical things I can do to tap into this potential?
That's the key question, right? And the source material really stresses that it's not just about understanding the theory, it's about actually embodying it. Winter says we need to create coherence within ourselves, both physically and emotionally. That's how we set up the conditions for implosion and connect to the longitudinal array.
So it's about getting our inner world aligned with all these principles we've been discussing.
Yeah.
But how do we do that? Like, what are some actual steps we can take?
The source material talks about things like meditation, mindfulness, spending time in nature. These practices help to quiet the mind, connect with that inner stillness and get in tune with the natural rhythms of the universe.
So it's about making space for that inner coherence to kind of bubble up, to become more open and receptive to those subtle energies and connections.
Exactly. And remember how Winter talks about our emotions generating those longitudinal waves? That's important. Cultivating positive emotions like love, gratitude, compassion. It's not just about feeling good. It's about actually creating the right kind of energy to align ourselves with the longitudinal array.
That makes me think about heart coherence and that idea of creating harmony between our heart, mind, and emotions. It's pretty popular these days.
Yeah, and it's a great connection. Practicing heart coherence, it can really help strengthen our energy field and make us more receptive to the longitudinal array.
It feels like there's a theme here, right? Like ancient wisdom and modern science are kind of converging, both saying that we need to get in sync with this universal energy flow.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? And it all goes back to interconnectedness. Whether we're talking science, spirituality, ancient traditions, it doesn't matter. The message is the same. Cultivate inner harmony, connect with that wisdom in our hearts, and we can unlock so much potential within ourselves and the world around us.
I keep thinking back to this quote from the source material that really hit me. The future belongs to those who can hear the whispers of the universe. It's like the answers we're looking for, maybe they're not out there in space, but right here inside us.
That's a powerful thought. It's a challenge to stop looking outward and start looking inward, to really tune into our intuition and connect with that deep wisdom that's within all of us.
It's a beautiful message to end on, don't you think? It's not just about understanding the science of implosion and longitudinal waves. It's about embracing this interconnectedness, cultivating inner harmony, and listening to those whispers of the universe within our own hearts. This journey, it starts inside each of us. And the possibilities, well, they're truly limitless.